Hello, you're listening to an interview with Josh Mercer from episode 24 of the Catholic Vote Radio Hour. Like and subscribe to the Catholic Vote Radio Hour on YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play, and follow us at Catholic Vote on Facebook and Twitter. I'm your host, Stephen Harriott. And now it's time for our weekly political discussion with political director Josh Mercer. Greetings, Josh. How are you doing?
Hey, good to be with you, Stephen. Doing great.
So the debate rages on over gun control. You have some very interesting thoughts about the way the left is approaching this debate and the extremes it's going to make sure that there's no hint of conservatism in polite society on the topic of gun control.
Well, first of all, we see there's this pressure to have corporations no longer associate with the NRA.
Right.
Hertz, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Delta Airlines. The reason why they're doing that is because they want an easy win, and they know they can shame these corporations on social media or whatever. But they also know that a legislative answer is difficult, and they can try to blame the NRA or, a lobbyist or whatever. All these congressmen and senators are paid off. But the fact of the matter is, when the Democrats held supermajorities in both the House and the Senate and Barack Obama as president, they didn't touch gun control because they knew a majority of Americans were against strict gun control measures. And so they know trying to achieve any policy victories is going to be extremely difficult, not just because you have a Republican Congress and a Republican president, but even if you had a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president, it would be very difficult because the majority of Americans don't support most of these measures, even though they claim that they do. So from their standpoint, they want the easy victory. So they're going to go after these corporations.
One of the immediate effects of this actually might be a massive political backlash. They're really overplaying their hand, especially with the shaming aspect.
Right. I think the American people at first were very sympathetic to hear some of these teenagers from Parkland talking about classmates that have been shot. Your heart goes out to these kids. It's terrible. But then some of these kids, they've been on CNN day after day after day, and they're talking about all sorts of different things like climate change even. But they're making this point that if, you don't side with them on each and every last policy decision that they're recommending with regards to guns, you want children to die.
Right.
And that is just not going to sell in Peoria. I'm sorry. People don't buy that. Like, should we raise the limit for rifle purchases from 18 to 21? Okay, maybe not. I don't know. Bump stocks, yeah, okay, maybe get rid of that or whatever, but are we going to get rid of every single gun that's semi-automatic?
Right. Well, you know what?
You're talking about 90% of guns in America. It's just, come on.
Yeah, that's the other thing is it's their policy proposals. What they're looking to do is ban virtually all semi-automatic weapons, which is to say virtually all weapons. That's just the way modern weapons are made. They're almost all semi-automatic. Every handgun is.
Right, and we're getting so many of these disingenuous arguments, like when they drafted the Second Amendment, all they had was simple guns that would fire a shot at a time or whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, but they also didn't have Twitter and Facebook when we crafted the First Amendment. Do we want to say you only can have the printing press? Obviously what we're talking about is, should Americans have the right to have guns for self-defense? And the American people right now overwhelmingly support the Second Amendment. And that's why they're going after these corporations. Corporations hate controversy. Their whole purpose is to try to sell as much product as possible, and they don't want to get involved in some of these things. But God bless them, they can't even disentangle themselves properly. It would be one thing if these companies said, you know what, we're not going to offer discounts to any advocacy groups anymore. We just don't want to play sides on guns, abortion, nothing. All across the board, we're just not going to get involved. Or they could be like FedEx and say, look, these are our discounts. If you use us on a regular basis, we offer this discount. We don't do viewpoint discrimination. So whether it's the NRA or the people who want to control guns, we offer the same discount to everybody. That's one way to do it. Either discounts available to everybody and you're not picking sides, or you say no discounts for any advocacy groups. I think that would sell better. But this idea that's like, well, no, I'm going to single out you, NRA, because you guys are somehow anathema now. That you really run a big risk here. I think it could escalate. I don't think this is just the end here.
Yeah, it's funny how moderation on this topic is being treated by the left as extremism and as completely beyond the pale. It's not the radical right position that's treated as beyond the pale. Even saying slow down, lower your voice, is being treated as totally beyond the pale, and you're not even welcome in the same country as me anymore. And you want children to die. It's really ridiculous. One of the Parkland students tweeted something about they hate us, and they are, she said, literally rooting for our deaths. In the same sentence, this girl made people hate her and then feigned complete obliviousness as to why they would hate her. You're demonically motivated and love child killing. And secondly, why do you hate me? Well, I hate
Right.
you because you just insulted me, you know?
Let me impugn everybody on the other side and then be shocked that people are frustrated by it. Yeah,
Right.
no, I mean, it's unfortunate. Now, they went after Enterprise and Hertz and Delta and all this other kind of stuff. It does have some consequences, though. By the way, the Georgia Senate just voted to block a corporate giveaway to Delta because they have their big hub in Atlanta. And
Right.
so this $50 million sales tax abatement thing was just evaporated. Like, oh, you know what? Now you're going to pay sales tax on all your jet fuel. You know, you want to play ball, we'll play ball back. So I sort of respect the moxie of some of those lawmakers. And is this the next step? You know, what's the next step, I guess? Will this escalate further? Could we get to a situation where regular mainstream Christian organizations are boycotted then, or ostracized or marginalized in terms of commerce, you know? Wait a
Right.
minute now.
Right.
You're with that Christian church. We don't want you renting cars from us or staying at our hotels or anything like this. Could we get into some sort of viewpoint discrimination? What if banks said we don't want to associate with the NRA? Well, actually, one bank already did. What happens if advocacy groups have a difficult time just opening up a bank account? It's really hard to do business. It's really hard to
Right.
have free speech. What is freedom of assembly if you can't open up a bank account?
We're not just talking about leftists rhetorically shaming people. If you move beyond that to ostracizing them from not only the public square and the debate over issues, but shaming companies into actually excluding them from the American economy or big important segments of it, that's a whole different.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing the left needs to understand is that these kind of things can go both ways. I mean, what happens if their organizations start getting targeted and they can't open up accounts at banks? You know, Catholic Vote, we had a situation where we couldn't open up a bank account. The bank said, we don't want to do business with you.
Wow.
Yes.
What was that
And
about? Was it about just because of
well,
our
look,
Orthodox Catholic stance on something?
They claim they no longer wanted, this is a big multinational bank. They said they don't want to have any political action committee bank accounts anymore, which let me just tell you, they were lying right through their teeth. Absolutely not the case. And then we had another thing just today. It wasn't us directly, but you know, sometimes conservative groups work together on different things and pro-life groups work together. And there was a bank that just said, we don't want to do business with these organizations over here. And so, you know, we partner with some of these other organizations for building up websites and that kind of stuff, you know, some of the behind the scenes stuff. And I was filling out paperwork just today to have to switch banks. It really is kind of amazing where it's like, I don't even want to be seen with you. Like, who would even know that I'm banking with you? I mean, all I'm doing is trying to open up accounts so I can write checks. What is the problem here? And we're getting to this sort of economic warfare. I really worry about what this is going to do to our country if this keeps escalating.
We've talked on this program a lot about things like Google searches being censored, channels being censored by YouTube, and about these giants like YouTube and Amazon and Google and so forth, and how we need to fight against those. But usually, you're right. I think of those in terms of debate. I think of those in terms of a battle of ideas and the culture wars. But actually, that kind of stuff turns out to be, it's much more about commerce. It's much more about impoverishing your enemy, right?
Well, what you brought up is the First Amendment right to free speech. And how much speech do you have if you get completely blacklisted by some of these digital giants? So you've been very good about bringing that up and talking about how Amazon doesn't want to sell this book or Google blacklists a search for something like that. And those are all good points to talk about the dangers to freedom of speech. These are not done by our government, of course, thankfully. It's done by private businesses or publicly traded businesses. But the left has been the one saying, you Republicans talk about business and all this kind of stuff and how government's bad and business is good. And they say, well, don't you realize that big companies can be a threat to personal freedom? And that's what they've been saying for all these years. Well, now they're mechanizing businesses to go against conservatives. So suddenly conservatives aren't facing the wrath of these big companies like Apple and stuff. But you made a good point about talking about the free speech implications. What I'm trying to say is don't just forget that. There's also the freedom of assembly. What kind of freedom of assembly do you have if an advocacy group can't open up a bank account?
Right.
Right now, they're saying no discounts for NRA members at Hertz Rental Car. But what if it got to the point where we won't even do business? Like the mayor of Dallas says, I don't even want the NRA to have their convention in my city. Are we going to keep ratcheting this up to the point where I can't even use a bank? This is the ATM for liberals, and this is the ATM for conservatives. I mean, Is this really? Where does this end?
It's so funny. It's so funny too, because the masks have come off with the left. I mean, even in my lifetime, I've witnessed this. The rhetoric of the left has transformed so much. Because when I was younger, I remember hearing all about rich capitalist pigs and rich capitalists and private economy was dangerous and so forth. And these powerful corporations are always trying to oppress the ordinary person. You don't hear that from the left so much anymore because they are the massive corporations. They've bought them and shamed them into serving their purposes, and you never hear that anymore. I remember I had an epiphany when I was about 16 years old, and I said it to my dad. I said, there is such a thing as a rich capitalist pig, and he's a socialist. And we're talking about crony capitalism. There's always this cooperation between social activism, the government, and using government power, and large corporations working like a gang.
Well, we saw this play out in Indiana just a few years back when Apple put the thumb to the state of Indiana and said, you really want us to do business in your state, then you got to play ball. And they squashed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of Indiana.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean,
and it was everyone. Walmart got on board with that and dogpiled Mike Pence. Salesforce dogpiled. All of these big companies, Walmart, for goodness sake, which used to be the villain on the left.
The hypocrisy is even bigger, though, because Apple was one of the biggest ones against this, right? And Apple, as we know, doesn't like religious freedom because they partner with the people in China where they don't have any religious freedom at all, that make iPhones for a few bucks an hour.
Yeah.
So religious freedom gets in the way of their profit motive.
Yeah. Well, okay. All of this, really, a summary of it is it's kind of dangerous because we're talking about people who are not very conscientious, to put it mildly, and they're trying to transform our culture, and they're using every means at their disposal, including big corporations, also government, and threats of penalty from the highest powers they can get their hands on. We really have to fight back on that. It's pretty spooky stuff, and God forbid we ever have to build our own Amazon and our own search engines and our own YouTube and all of this stuff. That shouldn't be necessary.
Well, I mean, all these platforms like Facebook and Google, Facebook is all about trying to connect people. And Google's like, let me help you find what you're looking for on the internet. It wasn't, I'm going to let you find whatever you want on the internet, so long as it's not conservative, so long as it's not pro-gun or pro-life or pro-marriage. So, yeah, I mean, all these platforms start out as just neutral. Like, hey, we're just trying to help you buy stuff, connect you to people. It was all about let us help you do what you'd like to do on the internet.
Right.
It was never about, well, we're going to just make Christianity to be something verboten, you know. So it really is turning a corner here. It could, and we got to be mindful of that for sure.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you, Josh. This has been another excellent analysis. This is really great, and thank you for that. Listeners, think about this kind of stuff and pray about it and then act on it. Do be serious about preserving our witness.
Well, we're not powerless. I mean, that's the thing. Like, NRA membership has gone up by 500,000 since this whole boycott started. So we can't fight back. I mean, I'm not suggesting people have to go join the NRA. But what I'm trying to say is when the left tries to attack, you're not powerless. I encourage people, obviously, to join Catholic Vote. There are organizations out there. You can fight back. Don't just roll over. Don't let the digital companies just squash out our freedoms.
Amen. That's right. And that's a big part of what we do. I mean, we're paying attention to this stuff. We want to have our finger on the pulse of it and draw people's attention to it so that they can fight back. It's a great point. We're not powerless. And let's also remind our listeners how they can keep in the loop about this kind of thing.
Yeah, please sign up for a free daily briefing. Go to CatholicVote.org/loop and encourage your friends to sign up as well.
All right. Talk to you soon, Josh.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.
Well, thanks for listening to this interview from episode 24 of the Catholic Vote Radio Hour. Again, you can like and subscribe to the Catholic Vote Radio Hour on YouTube, iTunes, and Google Play, and follow us at Catholic Vote on Facebook and Twitter. I'm your host, Stephen Harriet.